Let's go across live now to Beijing, where WION correspondent Patrick Folk is joining us live. Patrick, thank you for joining us this afternoon on WION. There is a scare in Wuhan, the original epicenter of this global pandemic, again reporting cases. More than 2 months, Wuhan was locked down and life is limping back to normal, and suddenly a second wave in China.
Yeah, well, I think certainly the fact have all been in the same residential compounds. They are locally transmitted cases, I should add. So at least you would say that authorities have it under control in terms of ringing it around into one certain area. There is a bigger concern, really, in the northeast of the country, in places like Jilin province and Liaoning and Inner Mongolia. These are places that have reported new cases in the last 24 hours. And it just seems to be that there is a difficulty in stamping out the disease in the northern parts of the country. And it's raising questions about what sort of news the government will be able to deliver next week, at the end of next week, when China holds thousands of delegates are going to be travelling to Beijing from across the country. And there are expectations for some positive as to what sort of news the government will be able to deliver during that gathering.
Patrick, we also learned that students are returning back to school in Wuhan. We in fact saw visuals of students back in the classrooms in Wuhan. Will China again put restrictions in the original epicenter?
Sorry, would you mind repeating the question again, please?
We had got reports that the students, high school students, are returning to school in Wuhan, and that was last week. Will China again put restrictions on movement of people in Wuhan?
There's no indication at the moment that they plan to do that. There are still restrictions, of course, in terms of needing to people do need to show that they are healthy in order to be able to move around, both in Wuhan and also in Beijing, I should say. But, it's worth noting that at this point, authorities have actually declared that every part of the country is low risk, apart from Jilin, towards the north of the country, where there is a cluster of infections that have been reported. But generally, there is a feeling that China is far beyond the worst of it, and far beyond the peak of the outbreak a couple of months ago, of course. So the cases that have been reporting over the last few days are not necessarily creating. Reports have been highlighting that the 17 new cases that have been reported in the last 24 hours is the highest Overall, though, that doesn't seem to be prompting a huge amount of worry here.
Patrick, one final question, but life is certainly returning back to normal in China, isn't it? Disneyland is opening in Beijing, and we're also learning that, cinemas and museums and other places might also reopen soon.
Yeah, that's right. Museums have been opening slowly, particularly here in Beijing. As we know, about 10 days ago, the Forbidden City reopened, that important tourist site that a lot of people come to Beijing for specifically. But yes, Shanghai, that is the big piece of news on Monday. It's reopened. Authorities have said that 40,000 visitors per day for the time being. That's about 30% of its capacity. But there is some doubt. And there are some mixed feelings among people in Shanghai about that. Some people obviously elated that they have another place for their kids to go to, somewhere they can take them out for the day. But there are also a lot of people that simply don't want to go to any sort of public place like this, although they are keeping some precautions in place. Notably, they aren't having these sort of character meet and greets like you normally would in Disney. We're told that a lot of the characters there are keeping a safe distance and waving to visitors from afar. And of course, they've got things like thermometer checks and so on and so forth inside the park, much like you do across a lot of other parts of China at this time.
Amid fears of a second wave in China, Wuhan certainly has reported new cases of the global pandemic. Meanwhile, New York has taken the lead when it comes to making fellow US states aware about Kawasaki disease-like symptoms in children, which have been linked to the coronavirus. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said that the state is investigating 85 cases of children with the toxic shock syndrome. He added that the New York Health Department will keep its state counterparts in the loop as the probe progresses. This comes after Andrew Cuomo announced that 3 COVID-19 infected children in the state succumbed to the Kawasaki disease. The development has sparked fears that children may be more vulnerable to COVID-19 as opposed to what is being perceived.
New York State is investigating 85 cases of a COVID-related, most popular to elementary school.